welcome to The Burnout, the show where we tackle the problems in education one solution at a time. I'm your host, Kendria Johnson, and we look forward to helping you beat the burnout. And welcome to another episode of The Burnout. I am your host, Kendria Johnson. I am your teacher coach. I make good teachers great by bringing them out of burnout back into a balanced life. And on today's show, I have a very special friend of mine. We've met through Clubhouse, I believe. Is that right, Larry?
Right.
We met through Clubhouse and we just clicked. He and I have we have similar interests, Prince being one of them. And we have, some, we just had some really, really deep conversations about emotional issues and some things that both of us have gone through in separate parts of the world and separate parts of our life. But today's topic is going to be how men deal with stress versus how women possibly deal with stress. And we're going to have a conversation about that since this is the burnout. We talk about stress-related issues on this show. Now, Larry is Larry Penton. His full name is Larry. I call him LP, but he is known as the FireMedic CEO, and he's going to explain a little bit about what he does, how he does it, and how he shows up in the world. Welcome, Mr. Larry. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thank you. And thank you for having me on your show. I am so excited. I'm so proud of you. I'm going to give you your flowers first. I always want to recognize and highlight Black educated women. Mm-hmm. I'm blessed to be born from a Black educated woman who I picked up yesterday at the Charlotte airport. She came here to visit us in Charlotte, our hometown of St. Louis. So she'll be here for the next 10 days. So I'm very
excited.
Definitely will tell her that. I am Larry Penton. Most people call me LP. I am a retired paramedic and a firefighter. I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. I've been in EMS since 2006. I retired as a COVID medic in 2020, right during the height of the pandemic when it started. And after I retired, we moved to Charlotte, which is where my wife, Mrs. LP, as everybody calls her, was raised. And this is where we started a company a year later called Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. Initially, we did virtual assistant type work, helping startups do all their back office stuff. Because I still have my license and a bunch of my certifications, I was getting pulled in for podcasts as a subject matter expert, talking about everything first responder related, tactical EMS, because I'm trained in that. I'm a consultant for active shooter hostile events. So when you see these breaking news stories happen, I go in and I talk about those things. I don't get into the politics or religion. I don't get into the 2A or the Second Amendment stuff. I talk about public health, public safety, and mental health issues as it relates to everything about first responders, specifically on the EMS and the fire side. I do a lot of conversations, especially on Clubhouse, talking about men's issues, men's mental health. And also I moderate a room. Actually, it's today from noon to 1, every Tuesday from noon to 1 Eastern, called Eating Disorders and Disordered Eating. And we talk about all things related to that. So that's just kind of a Cliff Notes version of what I do. And I'm also a podcaster. So I have a podcast called Trigger Warning Talk Podcast that Kendria was absolutely on. And your interview is blowing up. When I look at the analytics every week, it's rising up. So I interviewed Kendria last year, and her interview was called Emotional Vampires, Who Raised You? Yeah, definitely got to check that out. You got to watch it also, because you're going to miss some of the graphics that we have on the screen. But Kendria, I am so proud of you, and I'm so thankful to have met you and to know you and to have this conversation with you. Let's go.
How does that affect your job? You just gave me all those things that you cover. You go in and with those crisis situations, you go in there and you take care of people. What does that do to your mental state when you're trying to, decompress? When you're going home to Miss LP, like you mentioned, your wife, when you go home at night, how do you separate what you do from who you are and live a regular life? Can you talk about that? Tell our audience about how that happens for you. How does stress show up for you and how do you deal with it?
every day that I wake up on this side of the dirt, that lets me know that I'm not done with whatever I'm destined to do. And I'm a firm believer in everything happens for a reason, good, bad, ugly, and or indifferent. For me, I had great mentors, great support systems, and great teachers that helped me deal with stress because the job involves trauma, fire, EMS, police, inherent risks and traumas. Not every call, but a number of them are stress related. And so for me, one of the things that I always told Mrs. LP was, I want to come back home the same way I left, healthy, happy, and whole. I also wanted her to know that we're going to have communications about things that have affected me on my 48-hour fire shift or my shift on the EMS side. I want you to be able to have these conversations with me. Everything's not going to be a blood and gut conversation. However, there's going to be conversations that I need to have with you because I need to talk to somebody. I need to get it out. And I always embrace professional therapy, even the metaphysical modalities. So we'll talk about that in a little bit. For me, I did a woosah. When I would get a call, a 911 call comes out, we get suited and booted, lights and sirens. First thing I do for the first 10 seconds, I'm checking my pulse. Because if I'm all ready and stuff or whatever, I'm not going to be able to focus. And I know that I have to be the eye in the hurricane of your emergency. Gotcha. I got to be the eye in the hurricane of your emergency, no matter what that is, from getting a call at 2 a.m. to get a splinter out of somebody's finger, and that's a true story, to a full cardiac arrest, to a mass casualty incident, like some of these active, violent, critical incidents that we see in these breaking news stories. I have to be that eye in that storm because somebody has to do it.
Yes.
Somebody has to be the person or the people to bring a sense of normalcy to an abnormal situation. And that's where first responders really make their bread and butter. That's what separates us from just people that are, as we call them, immediate responders. I want to teach you don't have to be a paramedic or an EMT or a firefighter or a police officer. I can teach and train you on how to help people in emergency situations. Gotcha. We teach bleeding control. We teach people how to use tourniquets and chest suits. We teach about situational awareness. We talk about the concept of run, hide, fight. I'm going to go back into the therapeutic part to answer your question. For me, I embrace therapy because I know I'm just a person.
Yeah.
This is just flesh and blood.
Yep.
Air goes in and out, blood goes round and round. Anything that interferes with that, you can be clinically dead. I'm just a person at the end of the day. I know that the world as a whole isn't bad, but there are some people that want to see this world burn. And so, no pun intended, I have to be part of that firefighter group to put out those flames. I got to be able to talk to people like you who are in a whole nother part of the world, but we have similar interests. My role is to help us get to our humanity, to tap into that. If I need a kidney and you can drill, or you meet two criteria, you're a willing donor and you're a match, I'm going to make it. It's not going to matter that I got a kidney from a woman. You know what's going to matter? I didn't get a kidney from a goat. I didn't get it from a giraffe. I got it from a living, breathing human being who was a match, who was a donor, who said, I want to help save this man's life. And that's how we start. It's stopping the hate.
Yeah.
It's stopping a lot of the negative stuff. And so for me, in my daily work, I have all of these conversations and these thoughts. So when I come home, I can come home and talk to Mrs. LP about anything, good, bad, ugly, or indifferent. And if I need therapy, I know therapy is available.
I love it. I love it. I hope my audience is really paying attention to this, because I heard of several things in your talk. I heard support system. And you don't have to be, let me just be clear about this to my audience. You don't necessarily have to be married. You could have a friend, you could have your mother, somebody you confide in to go to. And of course, both of us agree on getting help. People of color need to stop, attaching themselves to that stigma of, Black people don't go to therapy. You just pray about it and the Lord will take care of it. Well, I did. I prayed about it. I did. Okay. But the thing that helped me.
We're going to talk about that off air. I got a story to tell you. Yeah.
You know what? I wouldn't mind hearing that right now, but you're right. We'll just table that for now. But yeah, that I am an advocate for therapy. But it's expensive. You know what's expensive? Heart attacks, high blood pressure, diabetes. Okay. The things that I was going through with my health. That was going to send me to the doctor back and forth, back and forth. Cancer is expensive. Those things are also expensive. And I just need my people to be able to equate your emotional and mental health with your physical health. Put those two things together. I promise you, they correlate. When you are not mentally and emotionally healthy, your body starts to react to that. Okay. And I've had guests on the show. I've had guests on the show. You are in the medical field, so you can attest to this. Matter of fact, why don't you go ahead?
Actually, I do. So here in the States, there's been this big push for defund the police.
Yeah.
I say it's wrong because of the way that it's worded. Mm-hmm. I know exactly what they really mean. What's been said is take the money away from the police department and start from scratch or whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, well, if you don't have law enforcement, you're going to live in anarchy vis-a-vis the movie The Purge. So nobody wants to live in anarchy for real. Mm-hmm. I say the focus should be, if you're going to say defund the police, the focus should be not taking the money from those departments and starting all over. Yes, they need to be retrained. That's part of that. You don't have to defund anybody to retrain folks. What they should say is take some of that money that's allocated to that department already in their budget and add mental health services. So where I worked in St. Louis County, Missouri, the fire department I worked for, the police that were in those communities that we serve, they had a crisis intervention trained officer on every shift. They would work with me, the lead medic, or whoever was the lead medic, to help with de-escalation. And we never had a police officer had to pull out mace, pepper spray, their baton, their Thomas A. Swift electric rifle, taser. People got to understand the definitions of these things.
Okay.
We never had those incidents happen. We didn't have incidents what you see on TV in some of these news stories with these police officers going ham on these individuals, because those officers had at least one person who was mental health trained. And so when we have 911 calls for mental health issues, again, my job is to come in, be the eye in that storm, and de-escalate and come up with a differential diagnosis to find out what's going on with you. So is it a medical or is it a trauma? And depending on that, it's going to depend on how I move. If it's a trauma, that could be a car accident, it could be a gunshot, it could be a stabbing or whatever. A medical can be heart attack, stroke, diabetes related issue, mental health related issue. Yes. I would say probably 40% of your 911 calls are mental health related. I didn't realize that when I first got into EMS. And so 85% of your EMS calls are medical calls. Cool. And so that's why they want fire departments to be cross-trained as EMS professionals too, because most of your calls are going to come out are going to be medical. Now, as far as the mental health perspective, in my experience, what I've seen is the better trained medics, EMTs, and police officers and firefighters from a mental health perspective, the better for the patient and the community as a whole. We see these breaking news stories where like in Minnesota, the 3 police officers and the 2 paramedics are on trial for killing Elijah McCain. You know, that shouldn't have happened. It shouldn't have went down that way. And we can talk about that on another platform or another day.
Right.
There's so many other stories that I've seen recently where medics have gotten in trouble because they encountered a patient who may have had a mental health issue and they didn't approach it better because they approached it in a negative way, either from strictly the law enforcement's perspective, but you're not that. You are providing the medical care. And so I'm not an ambulance driver. I'm a clinician.
Right.
I practice pre-hospital emergency medicine.
Okay.
None of my licenses or certs say ambulance or ambulance driver on them. I'm a clinician. I'm a practitioner. And if you don't approach the job like that, especially in stressful situations, because I can tell you every stressful situation has a mental health component too. And this is where the training or the lack thereof plays a huge part. Those professionals that show up, whether it's fire, EMS, or police, you don't know what their level of training is. You just see them show up and expect them to do or be able to handle whatever the situation is. And I'm telling you that we lack mental health training. We need more. We need more. We need more because we're seeing more of these mental health related calls come out. Yeah. How do you deal with somebody who's autistic? How do you deal with somebody who is bipolar 1 and they're in this big state of mania or they're schizophrenic? How do you deal with somebody who is dealing with a substance abuse issue? They're not OD, but they're high on a PCP or LSD or something like that. And they're running around, they're sweating buckets, they're naked. That's called excited delirium syndrome. That's where you see Superman energy and all this stuff or whatever. So we got to be able to deal with those issues and many, many, many more. For me, I say you increase the training for these stressful issues. That's going to help the medic or the first responder also. Because again, I got to go home. And I got to have all this stuff. I got to have a way to release this stuff. I got to have a way to deal with this stuff. And I got to have a way to move past this stuff, not only for the next call, but for the next day. Because this is a job at the end of the day. I mean, it's a career, but you know, you never get attached to a building unless you own it or your name is on it. I learned that from Mama LP who's here. So, and I live by that. We have to get better trained when it comes to mental health, because I say mental health crisis is the world's oldest continuous pandemic. It's been around since the beginning of mankind. It's not going anywhere. Stigmas, taboos, stereotypes, until we deal with all this stuff, we're going to continue to see a lot of the stuff that we see in these breaking news stories. Good.
Well, I cannot wait for people to see this. Okay. And there's something that you said, I was going to ask you what your final thoughts were, but I think you kind of already summed it up when you said we need more people trained with mental health training. They just need more training so we can stop having these unfortunate incidents on the news. Let's just call them that. These unfortunate situations on the news that we keep seeing, because that's all we see. And there's a story before. Okay. There's something going on before, but all we see is, brothers getting shot up in the street because, they, reaching for something and you don't know what kind of stuff they're suffering with. But I really enjoyed our conversation, but I know we got to wrap up. I know we could talk for hours about this.
That's okay.
We could talk for hours about this, but I want people, to get your information. Tell them where they can find your podcast, where they can find you and look you up. Let's say that somebody needs a healthcare professional to come out or a FireMedic professional to come out and speak on their stages. Where can they find you? Go ahead and tell us about your podcast, where to find you, and what all your handles are.
Our podcast is called Trigger Warning Talk Podcast, all 4 words, Trigger Warning Talk Podcast. We are streaming on all major platforms, and you can watch the interviews in 2 places, the free version of Spotify, so you don't have to pay for it, or our YouTube channel, which is the company's name, Penton Pending Consulting Solutions, LLC. We cover and talk about trauma. So I always tell people, if you're triggered at any point, especially like during this interview or any interview, and you need immediate medical attention or need immediate help, call 911. That'll get you all the mandated reporters, police, fire, and EMS. That starts the documentation process. We have uncensored conversations, so it's adults talking to adults. You can have children listen and or watch. We just say if they're under 18, have an adult 18 or older listen and or watch with them. We cover 4 areas. We talk about domestic violence, human and sex trafficking, sexually based offenses, and true crime. Under true crime, we do a missing person case at the end of every interview. 99% of those are melanated men, women, and children, runaway kidnapping or an abduction, because we want to bring the same energy and media coverage to those. You can contact me at pentonpending.com.
Okay.
pentonpending.com. Our email address is consultingsolutions@pentonpending.com. You can find me on Clubhouse.
Yes.
Find me on IG at LP FireMedic, We also have an IG page for our company. It's Penton_pending_CS as in Consulting Solutions. And if you want us to come out, because we do Stop the Bleed training, we travel across the country doing that. Did a training for LinkedIn at LinkedIn headquarters 2 years ago. We do active shooter training. We come out with emergency operations plans for your house of worship, your school, your business, your private home, or what have you. I just got certified to teach CPR and first aid through the American Heart Association. So there's a lot of things that we have going on. This is just a great way to network with people. And again, my goal is to work with people, anybody, gender be damned, all of that stuff, regardless of, anything, we don't do no bigotry or none of that stuff. If you want to
I got you.
do the work, hey, come on, let's talk. Let's have a conversation and come up with some action plans. Because you know what I always say, if it's no action plan going along with it, I'm out. I'd rather sit at home, binge watching the paternity court and picking the lint out of my belly button and get involved in these trauma dumping conversations. Because you know how people are, Kendria. You know how they are. They just want to talk. And they just want to talk. And that's it.
Yes. I was going to say, I don't know how you do what you do. But people say the same thing about what we do as teachers. I don't know how you do it. I don't know how you do what you do, but I'm glad that you are doing it. And I'm glad that you're showing up in the world, doing the things that you're doing. And I hate to cut this conversation off, but just like he gave you all his handles, go ahead and get in contact with my good friend, Mr. Larry Penton. I call him LP. And if you have any questions for me, of course, this podcast is called The Burnout with your host. I'm your host. Yes. And don't forget that we help teachers recharge their purpose, revitalize their passion, and regain their power. That's going to do it for us. Thank you, Mr. LP.
LP out.